Good afternoon, I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day. I'm sorry that this video is a little bit late today. I've been really busy and I am literally filming this on the same day that I'm uploading it, so sorry about that. But anyway, I released my latest instrumental single, He Is My Heart, last week. And as I've been doing with most of my recent instrumental releases, I thought I would go through the production file with you and just talk a little bit about how I produced the track. And if you haven't heard the finished track, then there'll be a link in the description down there and up in one of those corners somewhere as well. So, He Is My Heart. This track is different to the previous two releases. So I had In Flight in Switzerland, which are both sort of in the same vein of ambient music. This is more of an ambient post-rock track. I was trying to draw from some of my favorite sort of ambient post-rock bands, people like Explosions in the Sky, This Will Destroy You, as sources of inspiration, I suppose. In fact, on the video for this track, someone commented saying that, and I don't know if they will be watching this video, but that was one of the greatest compliments to my music I've ever received. Although I'm not entirely sure where the John Hopkins came from. I wasn't going for that, but I'll take it. So yeah, ambient post-rock was the vibe. I didn't want anything to be too edgy and kind of experimental. I wanted this to just be a sort of pleasant piece of music to listen to, but that also is really like explosive at the end. So let's have a look at the production file. So this is the production file for He Is My Heart. As you can see, it's a lot smaller than the previous tracks. This wasn't a particularly big project, and that's because I knew how I wanted it to sound. I knew that mostly it would just be organic things, you know, an organic drum kit, actual guitar recordings, and everything else is just kind of incidental. And there's a string section in here as well, actually, down there. So let's just start at the top and work our way down. So I used field ambience again for this. I've been doing this with a few tracks recently, and I just found it adds a nice kind of atmosphere to it. But what this was is just rain. So literally while I was producing this track, it started raining really heavily, and I was thinking, oh, that'll be a better thing to do than find a load of loops for field ambience. So I just chucked my microphone out of my kind of balcony window there, just recorded the rain twice, so one for hard left panning and one for hard right panning, and that just sounds like this. No, I'm completely wrong. I'm really sorry. I'm chatting absolute shit. That's not rain. That's just me sticking the microphone out the window for general ambience. The reason I thought it was rain is because the next track, which is called Be At Rest, which is coming out in 2 weeks' time, that one has rain as field ambience. Yeah, that's just the sound of outside my window. But again, it serves the same purpose. It just adds a little bit of sort of organic feel to things. So the next thing were the guitars. And I knew when I started this track that it was going to begin with that type of guitar pattern that kind of just repeats and then grows as the track progresses. It's 3 individual recordings. I'm not a skilled enough guitarist to play anything too complex, so I like split things off. Just DI'd straight into the interface from my Fender Telecaster. I don't have a guitar amp anymore. I used to have like a really crappy Line 6 Spider 3, but I'm not really a guitarist. I don't play guitar very often, so I didn't want to save up and buy one. Although if I had loads of money, I'd probably buy like a Vox AC30 just so I've got it. So the original pattern just went like this. Very simple 4-chord progression really, and then I added on top of that 2 things. The first of which is just this. And then alongside all of that was the kind of riff of the track, I guess. That just went like this. Nothing special by themselves, but when they're layered on top of each other, they sound like this. Sounds perfectly nice, and that's all those guitars do throughout the whole track. And in the big section, they are also still doing that in the background. But one thing I did do was record each line all the way through, in spite of the fact that it's a repeated loop. So I could have just done it once and then looped it, but I always feel like I'm being lazy if I'm doing that. It probably doesn't really make any difference, but I always feel like it is just ensuring that there's a bit more kind of originality and organicness to the sounds that I'm doing, because there will be minor differences each time that I go through it, and it just stops it sounding too sterile, I guess, if I just looped them repeatedly. In the big sections, I recorded 3 guitars as well for that, but they're just doing power chords really, so they all sound like this. They sound really messy there. I did neaten all of the guitars up a lot when I was mixing it. Again, just bear in mind, this is the production file, so this is kind of demo. All of the effects were taken off, and then I kind of started fresh when I was actually mixing the project. So if things sound terrible, it's because it's just basically a demo. So we've got a whole load of pads going on, primarily in the first section, because that's when I wanted it to be a bit more ethereal and a bit more dreamy. It starts off with just these two. So this one, pad 1, that's kind of just playing a sort of a pedal note all the way through. And for that sound, I just used the plate space piano from the Olaf Arnold Composer Toolkit, which is one of my favorite sample libraries. It's like, imagine a piano's been put through a load of reverb, but then you take the actual sounds of the piano notes out, and then you're just left with the reverb tail, and it's kind of like, sounds really nice, but it's a good kind of just background thing to have for a pad. And then pad 4 kind of plays incidental little notes every now and then. Really long release, really slow attack, so the kind of notes kind of just fade in and then slowly fade out again. Pad 3 is quite interesting, so it's the Spitfire Audio Labs choir thing, which is like a very free and very small version of the Eric Whitacre choir, which I really want to buy, but I can't afford it. During the mixing process, I changed a lot to that, so it won't sound anything like it does now, but then when you add all of these pads together, and there's another pad here, pad 5. But then when that's mixed with the guitars, it sounds really dreamy. So the guitars, field ambience, and pads are the main brunt of the first section of the track. The only other things that come in are an ARP synth, 2 pianos, and the drum kit, obviously. The ARP synth, which is another instance of a Juno emulation synth, which I just love, I use it all the time. But it's doing something really simple, it's just doing this. In the mixing project, obviously there are more effects on there. It would sound more like this. And the piano. So if we listen to how everything sounds in that section without any of the percussion. So let's have a look at the drums. Now, there are a few different things going on with the drums, but it's primarily an actual drum kit. I use Steven Slate drums, find the samples I like, and just kind of create a kit from that. And it starts off very simply, but you've also got this heartbeat that's going on. And I know it's not an original idea, having a drum beat kind of feeling like the heartbeat of a track. It's just that heartbeat combined with cymbal hits. And then later on I add more cymbals in, so there's like a splash, a china, a rise, loads of different things. The kick I really struggle with, and even now I'm not that happy with it in the final mix. I changed it from that kick and I created a more kind of loose, open one. I wanted something that was super low velocity, but super subby and bassy, but I wanted it to be like wide, and it was really hard to get. But the interesting thing about this in terms of the mix and the production in general is that there's no snare in any of it at all whatsoever. Literally, I don't even think I loaded a snare into it, because it goes straight from the kind of ride and kick stuff with all the cymbal nonsense going on to just this. And then even like at the very end, at the biggest section, there's still no snare. It just adds more cymbals into it. Just in case anyone wants some advice, I guess, I've made a bit of a stupid mistake in this project. Well, it's not a mistake, like, I did it on purpose, but it's bad practice. I have got multiple different cymbal hits all happening just to kind of make it sound bigger, but that's always going to be difficult to make sound really organic and really realistic, because the reality is that a drummer doesn't have, 6 arms. So if you find yourself in an environment where you're just layering multiple cymbal crashes because you want them to sound bigger, try and just find 2, but make sure that those 2 cymbal crashes that you're using have the power to be really loud. So that's the drums, and then all of the other stuff are kind of just incidental bits of percussion. Another sort of kick there that's doubling up as the heartbeat. I actually think I completely got rid of that when I was mixing. I don't think it worked with anything. In the bit where you kind of go off the edge of the cliff, I transferred the heartbeat from the kick drum to some Action Strike sort of cinematic percussion, but they're playing it very quietly, and in the finished track you can hear them, but it's not right at the forefront, because I just wanted to continue that. I wanted this to be a rhythm that was consistent throughout the whole track. There's a string section as well, actually, that comes in during that floaty section and then just builds. When we add everything together, it sounds like this. I hate having to listen to the production files again, because by the time I release a track, I've spent a lot of time mixing it, and I'm used to how it sounds in the mix, and I have to get that to a point where I'm like, yeah, this is now ready. And then whenever you then have to go and revisit the production file, which is often I don't really do any mixing at all, or it's just like tiny little creative things, to then listen to that and it sounds so bad compared to like what the finished track sounds like. Let's have a comparison, shall we? Compared to it's why mixing is so important to take seriously. Although if I'm honest with you, I'm still really not happy with the mix for that track, because post-rock is a genre that I don't dabble in very often. I mean, that's pretty much the second track ever that I've done that has a kind of ambient-y post-rock vibe to it. To get that to sound really good, I'd need to mix that kind of stuff all the time and be really familiar with what techniques work best. I'm not really working on any other tracks right now that have that vibe, because I don't feel like I'm qualified to release something like that necessarily, because I'm not good enough at the mixing side of it or even the production side of it. But that being said, I'm really grateful to those of you who have listened to it and have enjoyed it. So yeah, that is how I produced Here's My Heart. And like I said at the beginning of this video, there's a link to it in the description. There's also a link to my Spotify page, and if you're not aware of this, I'm releasing a new instrumental track every 3 weeks from now until the end of this year. The next one is called Be at Rest. That's the artwork for it there. It's coming out in 2 weeks, and here's a quick sample. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope that you've enjoyed this, and I did have one question if anyone wanted to answer. For the few people that find interest in these videos, in my production videos, do you prefer mixing or do you prefer production? Because I tend to use production because I feel like it's a more interesting video, and it's also easier to show what I've done without going into painstaking detail. But if you want to see how specific tracks have been mixed, then let me know in the comments and I'll try and make those videos for you. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope you've enjoyed this, and thank you for supporting my music so far. It's amazing. Have an absolutely fantastic day, and I will see you very soon.